Good morning. We start with Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga. From the heart of the savior of 100 deities of Tushita, on a peak of cloud resembling a clam of extremely white fresh curd, King of Dhamma, omniscient Losandrapa, please come here together with your sons. In the sky before me, on a lion throne, lotus and moon, my perfect pure Guru smiles with delight. Supreme field of merit for my mind of faith, please abide for 100 eons to spread the teachings. Your holy mind has the intelligence that understands the full extent of objects to be known. Your holy speech with its excellent explanations is an ear ornament for those of good fortune. Your holy body is radiantly beautiful with glory renowned. To you who are meaningful to see, hear, and remember, I prostrate. Pleasing drinking water, various flowers, fragrant incense, lice, scented waters, and so forth. Ocean of cloud-like offerings, both actually arranged and mentally emanated. I offer to you the supreme field of merit. Whatever non-virtue of body, speech, and mind, especially those opposite to the three vows that I have collected from beginningless time, I confess each and every one with fervent regret from my heart. You strove for much learning and practice in this degenerate age, and made your freedoms and richnesses meaningful by abandoning the 8 worldly concerns. Savior, we sincerely rejoice in your extensive deeds. Perfect, pure, holy Gurus, from the billowing clouds of wisdom and compassion in the sky of Dharmakaya, please let fall a rain of profound and extensive Dharma upon the receptacle of those to be subdued, exactly as they need. May whatever virtue I have collected benefit the teachings and all transmigratory beings, and in particular may it cause the essence of perfect pure Losandrapa's teachings to shine forever. Sajipuki Chuji Meto Tramrira Nidegempari Sangeshindu Miteua Hidrokunamdak Jilachupasho. By the merits of having offered this mandala to Lama Tsongkhapa and his 2 sons, may I, my family members, and all sentient beings be able to meet, practice, and actualize the teachings of the victorious one Losandrapa, who had the morality of eminently pure way of life, was courageous in an extensive conduct of the sons of the victorious ones, and accomplished the yoga of 2 stages of supreme bliss and emptiness. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Niryatayami. By the force of having fervently requested in this way, hollow beams of white light are emitted from the hearts of the perfect pure Father and Sons, and combining into one enter my crown. White nectar, the color of milk, flows from the opening of tube of white light, cleansing all my sicknesses, spirit harms, negative karmas, obscurations, and their imprints without exception. My body becomes as pure and clear as crystal. Now we recite 5-line Miktsema 3 times. Migme tsewe ten chen chen rezik, drime gimpe wampo jampel yang, dupo malu jonze sawendang, kanchen kepe tsungen tsongkapa, losan drape shabla soade. Migme tsewe ten chen chen rezik, drime gimpe wampo jampel yang, dupo malu jonze sawendang, Ganchen gepe tsungen tsongkapa, losandra pe shabla soade. Migme tsewe ten chen chen rezik, drime gempe wampo jampel yang, dupo malu jonze sawedan, ganchen gepe tsungen tsongkapa, losandra pe shabla soade. And a prayer for the swift return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche by His Holiness Dalai Lama. Peerless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Losang father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now. Holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings. Through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and for mother living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels, and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in a glory for fortunate disciples.
Sanji Chedang Sojin Chonum La Changju Bardo Dan Japsun Dagi Chushi Gibon Dag Drolan Penshi Sanjin Drubar Sho Sanji Chedang Sojin Chonum La Changju Bardo Dan Japsun Dagi Chushi Gibon Dag Drolan Penshi Sanjin Drubar Sho Sanji Chedang Sojin Chonum La Changju Bardo Dan Japsun Dagi Chushi Jeban Dagi Drolan Ben Sanjin Drubar Sho Kangi Tuzini Zoni Tawa Tamche Pambi Chere Tambi Chun Dunze Kodam Dela Changze Lo Namo Lai Kedan Lo Dano Zegi Trimo Dada Mi Kedan Dando Kunji Danam Chizam Tamche Kedu Dagi Chuden Do. Good morning, everyone. Shapadileke Rumbuche
Sopetele again, Sopetele.
is my teacher.
Oh, this is must Sopeki Kenyan.
La,
Sopeki Abieki Ken.
yes. 아니 드리남시페 기부 양주칼란조 추게 되는 기부배였어요. 이렇게 해서 내가 너 뱀도 왔으라.
So today the weather is really quite magnificent. It's a lovely day to go out and enjoy nature, maybe go to the beach. This kind of thought is likely to be rising for all of us.
나 마데란데 코체로 왔는데
Kunda?
나 인지면 대용 걸 등일 레가레스 안 줘서요 말했어.
But today I'm working, so I have to be here. I have no choice.
들다 좀 쓰더니 드니 당한데 루루 쳐야 됐다. 넘버 산지비 추 생인데 간다지음에 들어 디톨라다 당기게 메세나로라야 당기 메세나로라야 최장 대바레스라 이 메세나로 최장 대바인자 아니 드디 얌sem부로치라 나랑아도 삼서 사운단디게 아니 최장 대바레 되네 메세나 최장 대바 단다이나가 멘투네 아니 최장 대고 삼성지 마도 아직 내가 셴바치다 텐지지 채우고 삼성 로나 자원이는 콜고면 도스 그 장모셔반 이 샘나로라야로 단당이 멘투네 당가 가주스 되거는 데리는 양의 최장 대고 삼성지 마도 아니 셴바 삼성지 콜고면 도스
Dini kena sosorang ki kola sungi yope. Sosorang. Dini nga kadu yine di dena nga mötene choshe nangi yodes. Kena so nge mitsang nangsin. Kasi kena mitsang ki kola chik sung song di ko masong. Kena nge mitsang ki nangsin. Di dan drabo sung pimpe mitsang ki kola.
mitsi ngi
Mitse.
야 무상말 나도 무상 요 말해
Well, yafudu. Then it goes on.
yeah.
Of course, I was only joking about, well, not joking about the beautiful day, that's for certain, but about having the wish to go out today. To be honest, the wish I do hold sincerely is that for as the purpose of my life, the way I want to live this life, is to, whenever there's the opportunity to share the Buddha's teachings to those who have some interest, this is how I wish to live whatever remains of this life. That's all.
니도 상담원디게 먼저 무슨 내가 가르쳐 봐야 나와. 아니 배나 때문 따기 봐나. 때문 때와나 때문 살직디 니데 숨 때와나 디젤 때문 따에 녀브려지 인거 왔어. 아니 가리 봐나 칼라지 신부지 세바나 칼라드 살직니 숨세다. 아니 니마따고 산이 조마로 왔어. 이나 최대 뒷사원이네. 뒷사원이네 레몬도스. 가츠스게 비 최고토라 상담하느냐. 아니 지 로타 마시를 가둘라 샘깔에 가야지 그러면도 최직 고된지 신 디소즈 샘다파 타 니우르지 차와나 아니 베 아니 기분 줘야지 마도 사원이니여서 말했어.
We look at our lives, we'll see a constant theme that if we do something and we're enjoying it, eventually we will have had enough and we need to put it aside. So, for example, if you watch a film and it's great, you really enjoyed the story, and you decide to watch another, maybe then two are enjoyable, but a third, now this is a bit too much for one day, and you put it aside. Likewise, if you're watching sport and it's a great match and that your team did well, and immediately you go to another channel and you watch another game, but eventually it becomes a little much and you get a bit bored and it's time for something else. And so too with delicious food. If you have a fabulous meal, you think, wow, this is just the nicest thing. But if you were to eat that same meal every single day, eventually you get a bit tired of it. But the Dharma is different. The more one engages in the Dharma, the more peaceful, calmer, happier one's mind becomes. Engaging in the Dharma doesn't lead to a fatigue with the Dharma itself. One may get tired, but one doesn't get tired of the Dharma or get bored in relation to the Dharma. That's all.
The 가르던 데어요리 슬라운디 만주 추억 나눠 디시고다 추어레다 추세고라다 좀 된데기 랍샤기 나눠라 있는다 좀 된데기 떠주고 나눠 있는다 아니 좀 된데기 진주게 야가른 케바츠고 송 나눠라야 아니 내가 그 대화다 타도 그 대화세야지 땐도 대화세야지 여러 딘정한주 칼라사야다 페나 데모타야다 세모제라 소바디 그 내가 그 대화성 레마도 디파 두군디게 대화 체르야지 용구요 말아왔어 그 내가 그 대화레마도 다 추억이 냠는디 아니 샘기 대화디 가주스기 아니 균짱 바이나 코띵 사브를 줘야지 땜을 줘야지 줘간자 아니 최장야디 땜도 대화든 통구 여반자 라 더 인주 인사레스 라
When we talk about Buddhism or Buddhist teachings or the Dharma, what it refers to is primarily the teachings from Buddha Shakyamuni himself and the commentaries to them by the great Indian masters. And it's through engaging with these that one achieves both forms of happiness. There's a temporary happiness, which comes and goes, and this is what we have much experience of. And there's an ultimate happiness. An ultimate happiness is happiness that is lasting, it's stable, it doesn't wane, but one's always at ease, always at peace. So the kind of activities we engage in our life, whether it's eating delicious food, watching enjoyable films, or exciting sport, these do lead to pleasure, these do lead to happiness. But that happiness is temporary. It is always temporary. It always passes. It always becomes, now I've had enough. It cannot lead to happiness which is lasting, stable. Whereas with the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha, to the extent that one is able to train one's mind in them or put them into practice, to that extent, one's mind becomes ever more at ease, ever calmer, more peaceful. The happiness that one experiences becomes ever more stable. And this is the progression towards the attainment of ultimate happiness, happiness which will never fade. So in this way, engaging in the Dharma is very different from engaging in anything else. That's all.
Tadia ani nganzu lusem ni yongurasra lugi tok jongda dawjita lujong dawjin baina ra luze zela sobada lugi jongdar di chedam jagar kebat tu son yores ra panden chuji tawase dangonni thani kita ani rigbata gona chamba do yora chambas genjara ha chambanganza del yora chamba tangbo delidini ngonzo thokbore da teri kon deleshara to chamba do rigbat saw yora da panden cheda gi son yorda lujong de kazu se zeba inaya tamedu pe yo mares ko en kolya se yores sem gi jongdar delaya tameba koni pe yores di son yore di ngoni nganzu ngoni shimjuk chebana di insares ra
In society, we know that both the body and the mind can be trained. So someone like great sports people or athletes, they put a lot of energy into training their mind. But with the training of their body, athletes and great sports people put a lot of effort into training their body. The great Indian masters of the past identified, such as Chandrakirti, identified that the mind is quite different from the body in that, well, whilst both the body and mind can be trained, the mind can be trained limitlessly, but for the body, there certainly is a limit. And actually, now that I mentioned the word Chandrakirti, an old friend Jumper has just arrived, who's also very intelligent, and just seeing them reminds me of Chandrakirti. So, but back to the presentation. Athletes know, and we as viewers of great sports people know, that there is a limit to what the body can achieve. But the mind is limitless in how far it can be developed. The mind is limitless in its potential. So the mind in this way is radically different from the body. The body is quite constrained, but the mind is not. The mind is limitless in its potential. That's all.
Chamba rigba ya ores lara. Nganzu chokbo shemba jora. Jesus said, "Kondel doa, kondes chagda sadesh." Chagda sad.
So today I have many friends here, including Jumper, who really is someone quite intelligent, and then there's also Jesus, who's he's a little bit more let's say hard-headed, a little more stubborn.
Also dirida tinza dingoniresra ganzu lüdi lü sedi renga watsam
Think our some?
renga wasedi negab tsam jagar gi keba chembo tebena ganzu namji chanju sem song da ji dosra chanju sem ya nyamnen chene korangi ani sem da chanju sem nimbo be ani chigba chading ge 강사 지겨랬으라 디자스 전부 시발라리스
Ngato kari gyaka kepa ngato pena jansu kisemde jangna dene
야가르기 개발 전부 야스 전부 시발라 생인디 잔주그 셈 장진 잔주그 셈다 시발라 코랑기 셈님보다 배 찍부 찍장 레딩이지 강사 딘리지레스 아니 시발라 가르송 오레스라운디 시발라기 류티 랑칸타오레스 만존 랑칸지는 데바이나 랑칸지는 데바는 랑칸디 샤는 로고 그러스 아 가주 니마 가주 대기여 봐나야 디르는 대야리마도 데님 랑칸디 샤는 로고라 데난신 안주 세디 류디 안주 세린도 가주스 네바이나 디르나야 류디 베주치야리마도 세드 조바다 류디의 카트는 로고레스 아 딘리 송여레 딘자 류디 네갑자민자 류디 네갑자민자 아니 류라 템비 데와티야 네갑 그 데와치 차고레스 telako rigba gunzen do asra
Of course, I was only joking about my friends Jumper and Jesus, but but to continue, what I was saying about the development and the potential of the body and the mind, this really is the case, and this is important for us to come to recognize. Furthermore, a further difference is that a great a master from ancient India, Shantideva, he is renowned for the remarkable bodhicitta that he developed, where the bodhicitta, or the mind of enlightenment, was completely infused with his very being. And this was something that he guided others in, because just like he achieved this, others can achieve that same good quality. Moreover, he presented that our body should be viewed as like a guest house or a hotel, a guest house in which one only temporarily can abide. Just like every guest house or hotel that one visits, one will eventually leave. And that is the case with our body. The time will come when this body is left behind and we will leave. So recognizing this, then, we can see that this body is something that can be put to use, but we will have to leave it. And so what this body is temporary in its nature, and therefore it's in dependence on how we utilize our body, the happiness that we experience can only be temporary, it cannot be lasting. So he presents a reason such as this to explain the difference, why the happiness of this life is always transitory, is always temporary. That's all.
There's a di nganzugi ratachida hakwayan roji. Ranganzu pena lu la tembi devati Lula tembi devadi mangcha ta chi sugjenji la teni yongo ko das pena anza ta desa kibuji ke gan devai na pe kibu sorga da pe gan la dema thagdu ta kibu sorga da ra ani ha kibala na samgra da ne dus de da ro peshi chuzu chi nil ma do dego maras nyobi ngras kamba kya ko ngan 짱공인로 야랑공인로 지우게 딜리차인 것도 어서로 다가랑기 단지기 대화디 네급그 대화성이 바디 디낭신기 디릭바디 칼라사야 둘로코야 파수세모세야 가와라 자르바이나야 아니 룰라 템비 대화디 네급sam인자 군조르고요레스 다 셈기 대화디 로 딘리인사마레스 로 오늘기 셈래야 대화지 용약이 아니 즉 준투바이나 문투니 drona dena ani nikuan kamni chene ani devadigi gyunti ro semgi deji yaguji tuntu bana tiyungu yasares.
The happiness that arises in dependence on our body or in relation to our body usually comes about also in dependence on the material world. So for example, if we live in a lovely home, we happy being at home. It's a beautiful home. We got all the comforts that we may need in our home, and we're happy being there. But that happiness fades. Our pleasure in our home fades, and eventually we're going to want to go outside. So we'll be a little bit bored, a little bit frustrated inside, and we'll want to go outside or even change our home. So that's just one example, but of course this relates to everything else: the food that we eat, the clothing that we wear, entertainment that we enjoy. All of these we engage with the material world and through our physical body, our material body. And therefore, the happiness that arises is always temporary. On the other hand, though, the happiness that arises through our mental engagement, this can be developed to the point where this happiness is lasting and stable and never fades away. This would be a happiness that we experience day after day, month after month, year after year. And even when we are asleep, the mind is always calm, always at peace, always happy. So the happiness that arises in dependence on the mind, and the mind alone, not the body, can be developed to this point. That's all.
Jomden digi labja kanda ji somba ina ya ani semdan driviton sungu yores ten zu sem gipige ani deji jonsa ge shitsu la ya charni and this sungu to asra.
The teachings that Buddha Shakyamuni gave, and that have been clarified by all the later generations, are focused solely on developing the mind, because it's through developing our mind that lasting, stable happiness can be developed, a happiness that never fluctuates. That's all.
Teda dinganzu ge semgam da dünni jomden digi chötta danganzu kadüna diredo ata jomden digi chödi ganzu semgam da dünni ani chötten shawachik ten zu dinganzu dewa dögu yobanza dewa druptang ani tab kandachi gugu yome tab kari ime ro pigi tendu dewa drupigi tab di kari ime disewu chin songshachik.
And Buddha Shakyamuni taught, or all the teachings the Buddha gave, are to be applied to the mind. This was clear in his intent. He explicitly stated that. So this we should bear in mind. All the teachings that we hear are about training our mind. Buddha's practice, the meaning of Buddha's practice, is to train our mind. So therefore, the methods, the techniques that the Buddha taught that will lead to lasting, stable happiness, we need to come to know. And these, the Buddha taught clearly, the complete unmistaken methods that will lead, through being cultivated within, to our mind attaining lasting, stable happiness. That's what can.
Jidang nganzu lugi dewa tobyagi tab song yo marwesla no song yo res ra nganzu lugi da ani lu yakshu di mi lula tembi ani namju ra ani socha shenli kyabardu pabigi bigi samlo tangtangi namju di mi lula teni drugu yo banza ani mi lu tobyagi ani gyukari imbati ngunzini ani di milu tobyagi tabdiang song yores mi luten tobi tsawi jela ya ani chig mi tenla ya digin chong ya chig di longcho la teni jungu yore di nguyo res ro ten longchon chong ya gyutsu kari imbati ten chomden di song yores inaya ke cheshu di ani semla tembi degi druptanga rimbadi manshudi kecheshudi semle tembi dejiduya songdo asra dikayesna ludan semni nani sem zo chagoya banza kecheshudi sem chagoya banza 아니 kecheshudi 아니 kecheshujin songyo resra dar direndo ara
Whilst the teachings of Buddhism are focused on developing the mind, it's not that the body is not referenced and completely ignored. In fact, the Buddha taught that the attainment of a human body is essential. In other words, attainment of a human life, which is marked by having such a body. This is essential. And why? Because of the incredible human intelligence that accompanies this human rebirth. The Buddha taught clearly the specific causes that will lead to the attainment in future lives of a body like this, of a human body. So he identified and taught these causes. Moreover, he also recognized that temporal happiness is dependent on material goods, and beings, humans, need this. And therefore, he also taught the causes to ensure at least sufficient, but ideally an abundance of material goods. Whilst, therefore, the Buddha did teach how to accumulate the causes to achieve a human body, as well as how to accumulate the causes for abundant material goods, the focus really is on the mind. The focus is on developing, transforming the mind. And why? Because between the two, body and mind, it's the mind that is of extreme, or in particular, importance. That's all.
there's the remember chin song by na ani pi da ji mi lu ra 당한주 갑갈에 다 밀루 아니 다 약슈세거라 다 밀루 비게 오늘 남주 푹 춤바야 준퇴야기 루직 라 당한주게 좀 된디게 따주 장 닝기 릭지 용거라 다 디더진 바나 좀 된디게 따주디 우연히 술라야 뜬이 송샤바지 마도 마힘바지 임바당 임바지 마힘바지 아니 시에자와 딘디 따르지 싸우니 자가 말이었어. 그래서 딘디 우연에서 따르 장 통행기 따르 장의 고급 영행기 르덴지 여러 와서다. 디 딘디 르덴 토야기 규소디 미기주봉 수름도 샤요레스. 라 덴델야 메기주부 수르 약부 직송바이나 아니 르디 제네 양자 르레온디 다케왕하시 킬링이 짐바나 양자 르레온디 다라나 나신 르지 토그레스 sorry
Buddha Shakyamuni encouraged students to accumulate the causes to have a human body, because a human body comes together with remarkable human intelligence. And the human intelligence that we all have has tremendous potential, tremendous potential. And all of Buddha Shakyamuni's teachings are in accordance with reality. He never taught methods that are not beneficial. Therefore, everything he taught, if applied, will be of benefit for oneself, and through oneself, for others too. So therefore, when the Buddha taught the causes that lead to a good rebirth, these should be listened to, because he's encouraging us to firstly recognize the causes that both led to the attainment of this human life, but also to ensure that we accumulate the causes that will lead to future good rebirths like we've achieved in this life. And the primary cause, or the very cause that leads to good rebirths like we've achieved in this life, rebirths as a human being, is ethics, ethical restraint. And of the different types of ethics in particular, the ethical restraint of abandoning the 10 non-virtues. This is the cause that led to this good rebirth, and by accumulating these causes again, we will achieve further good rebirths. Therefore, the Buddha taught that it's imperative that throughout this life, we strive to abandon the 10 non-virtues and thereby create causes for further good rebirths. That's all.
The Migi Jubung Tsultrim is laundi. Toma delaya, and so chebati pango grace. There are shengi so chebati. The Migi Jubung Tsultrim ki shimata vares. The Sokche Rungmari said the Kaso the Changbu Tangyang Chiagi. Samlogic rendo asara changbu tangyan chiya ge samlogic kansana nganzu soglaya phamba mengin soglaya susu soglaya chete mijing ji yomares
Igoma Songkonda.
susu sogza chimu menzing ji yomares ro penam bujigin bayna ya
Goson.
sogza chimu chi nganzu buji pa tukdo chin lamsa chödo di ku sogza chimu chi ge yobanza 아니 공부를 두고 sikjarda 아니 깨우 꼴라 소는 심도 방스 이망아니 직단 직전 계란 샘레 얘기래 아니 야부 교기 소주 만지 치스 저 소차 간다 지인 바이네야 수수 소도 싸치무 미징 수치게 요 말이스 딘전 공부를 두기 코랑 저보 야부 될야 아니 계란기 인지 미니게 생기 속 제야디 저 야부기 아니 팀단의 생기 속 제라 속이 팀 속어라다 미칭니 마임바 야타 mambu pe sokchege tim taondi ani magme taondi ni nyeba chimbo sado dinza ani mixeg damya di kerang sokcho machi sokcho bi lega tsawni machi soglaya phangba mengi suchi yo mares dinza ani the susu sokdi ani za chimbo yo ba nanshi mishingi sokdiya sokcha shengi soglaya za chimbo dinanshi res dinza 소소라 디 총나 문데바 나제 파셔면 되고요 말에 딘디 문데바지 채반 디 참부 말에스 다 간지 신래 네버레스 라 안 디긴 데블이야 아니 수수기 세 통을 줘야다 아니 깨와치마 르라 르 독자래야기 귤어서부터 뭔고 쪼디 아니 참부 매바디 라 먼저 미진자 미약부지 채고나 장부 지고다 서라 장부 제약이 타블럼 찍여버디 먹이 주면 술좀 송야 델레 야가지 먼저 장부 제약이 타블럼 요 말이었어 상로 야부다나
Dene tikchede kompolundu ke tikchede yanka songok nangena tikchena hakuchum.
깨우콘라 깨우스는 간사라다 심진 탐제라야 아니 랑기 속티 하장기 짜침부여레스 된지 계란기 생기 속 맞지스
The Buddha taught that the causes that led to the rebirth we have as a human being and the causes we therefore need to accumulate again so as to continue to have good rebirths like this is the ethical restraint or abandoning the 10 non-virtues. The first of these 10 non-virtues is that of taking the life of living beings, of killing. So as human beings, we have tremendous capacity that comes with having this good rebirth. We have the capacity and this is a capacity we should live up to, that we should fulfill. We should engage with others in a way that is just, in a way that is fair. So how this relates to taking the life of others is the great Indian master Nagarjuna. He made the point that in the same way you value your life, so too does every other living being. When you think about this, this really is the case. Each of us here, everyone that we know, values their life. From the animals that we have interaction with, we know they value their lives. So not just mammals, insects, and so forth. Every being that's alive values their life. Nagarjuna pointed this out. And this we need to think about. In fact, our society recognizes this too. Throughout the world, countries outlaw killing because they know life is valued. Even in our modern world, warfare is regulated. This is a key point to understand why life should not be taken. Everyone values their life, and therefore, no matter what being you harm, what being you kill, you're taking the life of a being who values their life. Therefore, killing is always harmful. And being harmful will lead, those karmic causes will lead to bad rebirths. So now that we are humans, in this life being human, with this incredible potential that we have, we should fulfill that by ensuring the way that we engage with others and with ourselves is honest, is fair, equitable, and just. This is important. Let's look at it.
Tinza Nanzu Zambalin ya Mitsamagi Rang Sedi Be Zachimbu Ra Kichimbu Shuch Lagoras Ra Rang Sedi Ta Rang Singidi Any Wanyug Gejamaimba Tambu Tanjan Chiati Ra Nanzu Rawans Lawandi Susu Digi Druadi Susula Ramayore Susula Topdan Yores Susu Digi Druadi Susula Topdan Yores Susu Dungar Sevadi Susula Dunga Meba Soyadia Susula Topdan Yores This Susu Rama Res The Susu Rama Long Jenny Shenla Dunga Tebaina Shenla Dunga Teagi Shenla Seva Chiagi Topdan di Kerala Yomares Diomaroda
Kari Yomare kono Kari Yomare.
Shenla Seva Chiagi Shenla Dunga Teagi Topdan di Sheng Sok Chiagi Topdan di Kerala Yomares. I don't know.
Nga so rangwang yore, netang di rangwang sena, nga so dewa drup yeki rangwang yore, nga so yang dugnel drup yeki, so rang dugnel drup yeki rangwang yore.
Dunga Dunga Meba Soyag Rama.
Ah,
Dunga Meba Soyag Rama Yores. Ani Shenla Dunga Soyag Topdan di Yomares. Shenla Dungar Soyag Topdan di Yomares. Sheng Sok Chiag Topdan di Anzula Yomares. Sheng Pena Sheng Lonju Choyag Topdan di Anzula Yomares. So Susu Gup Angel Kariana di Longchiag Topdan di Susula Yores. Sheng Longche Pig Gup Angel Soba di and one Yuchin Su Choyag Topdan Momading Anzula Yomares.
di anche come so ki shempe ki longche so longche drup yeki topdang yore.
Susu Longche the Longche Susu Longche di Susu Peju Chiag and Topdan to Susu Yores. Mi Sheng Longche di Rangi Peju Chiag Topdan di Susu Yomares. Mi Sheng Longche. Ah.
De konso pena nga so kompa machena nga so pechu tangi kin drup yomare.
Yomare Topdan Yomares.
Then koso.
Da di gi kaso da lamdin chimachi di megi chubung surum songya teres. Da megi chubung surum songya na jambu tangjang lamlan rogors darwa.
Therefore, from what I've just said, when we look at ourselves and we look at what we observe in the world, we can recognize that everyone holds their life as dear. Everyone values their life. And moreover, if we talk about independence or freedom, where we do have some freedom and independence is in whether we attain happiness for ourselves or whether we eliminate our problems and difficulties that we experience. So we have the freedom to attain happiness for ourselves and to overcome our problems and difficulties. but we do not have the power to eliminate the problems and suffering and difficulties of others. This we ourselves cannot do. We can overcome our own problems, but we can't eliminate the problems of others, the suffering that others experience, the difficulties they have in their life. We cannot eradicate that for them. Moreover, all the pleasures and enjoyments and material resources that are ours, we have power or influence or decision over how we utilize those. But we don't have that same power or influence or decision-making capacity over what others have, over their resources, their enjoyments, their pleasures. We don't have power or control over that, but we do have over our own. So this situation where we have the capacity, we have the freedom, we have the independence to have power over our own attainment of happiness and our own eradication of problems and difficulties. Having this capacity is something that has come about in dependence on causes, and in particular on the cause of ethical restraint, of having been ethical. That's okay.
Dinza, the Nanzu Migi Milaya Nutsichia, Shanglaya Nutsichia, Gugin the Caniligores Laundi, Shangi Sorchea, any Shangi P. Lonjo Toya, any Shangogo Tanya, Sick, any Chick Shanlaya, some Inchia to Zo, and it's so di, any Num singing. Ani kulung ditonero, ani pena mariwa seda, ndechada, ani control, ani chakdog la soba, tintigi lodi shukchiondi, ani matang ki chawati, ro, tambu maybe ki chawati, legati, ani shodrog yores. Ro, hong kiwatam pena chomdindini chene, ani Kivatamatus Kadu in the Tambu Tanjan, Miss Sutuba in the Chibachijan, Jomdin de Davadi, Sutuba in the Yam, Chibachijan Siktogoras, Kansan Sempat Saman Sanjainza, Suzuki Nami, Suzuki, Ben Shatani Chibi Pudan, Suzula Zawa Nin Magang Cheding in Gay, any piggy minimudi, Jomdin de Winnie. Sewa chiba yungores. The cousin of Kurang Juji, Chagdan Nimu Yons over Sevainza. Any Yabu Chevaina, quite any Kolaya, Gaoyon Yajadam, Yabu Machivaina, Yabu Machiva the Piggy, so same truni, Chagdan Nimu Wangi, Chigi Obati, Sigondi, Kolaya Sewa Chitugores. And Nanzu Piggy non trudi. Chagdan Nimungu Angimba Ngumasendi, Mikorang Chigdu Samsam Sorondi, and Medela Magawa, Simjan de la Magawa, or Dindi Yungudo Asra.
When we engage in non-virtuous behavior that brings harm, such as taking the life of a being, of stealing what others possess, or of deceiving them, cheating them. This comes about in dependence on a motivation from our side, and that motivation will be afflicted. It's usually afflicted by ignorance, or by anger, or by attachment, or by jealousy, and so forth. So with such an afflicted motivation, we engage in behavior that brings harm to others. Either we deceive them, we steal from them, we take their life, and so forth. This way of engaging is not just, it is not a fair or equitable way of interacting with others. And it's contrary to our capacity as humans. Buddha Shakyamuni taught in this regard that all beings value their lives. All beings yearn for happiness. There is no difference here on this fundamental level between any beings. Therefore, we should relate to others in an equal way, because on this fundamental level, all beings are the same. So this bias we have towards our own group, for usually our own family or our own social group, we have a bias towards them. This, the Buddha said, can be harmful. Buddha rather said we should the same closeness we feel towards some, we should develop towards all. We should feel the sense of closeness towards all beings equally. And to do so, one develops an attitude of loving kindness. And with this motivation of loving kindness, whoever we interact with, we will be holding them as dear, and we will interact with them in a way that brings them benefit. And why? Because we value them. Whereas if our motivation is afflicted, there will be those that we dislike, and we will therefore act in a way that we're quite aware will bring them harm. But we do so because we dislike them. We push them into a category apart from us. We certainly do not value them. That's all.
Tinza chom den dige ranganzuge tam matangwa cheya dunghar yongya ge tsawa di ane chagdan nyumu yimba ti signi ane chagdan nyumu ane seyak meba soyagi tab di tenwondi ta zu tadrug toni ro chom den dige tawa tenjong singin di toni ane chagdan nyumu seyak tab di ten yores 아니 샘그 대기 주야기 탑소디 아니 로 따주고 토니 제국도 왔어라
Buddha Shakyamuni taught that when we act in a way that is inequitable, that is unfair and unjust, this is how we bring problems into our lives and into the lives of others. This is how we cause difficulties for ourselves and others, how we add to our own suffering, the suffering of others. And that when we act in this way, it is because of a motivation, so ways of thinking, and these are afflicted. Usually, there will be attachment and anger coming from ignorance. So Buddha Shakyamuni taught how to identify the cause of our problems, but he also taught the method by which we can eradicate that cause, eradicate thereby all our problems and difficulties. So Buddha taught both to identify the causes of our problems and difficulties and the method to eradicate that and thereby attain lasting, stable happiness. So to do this, the Buddha presented specific views that need to be cultivated. And it's through the cultivation of these philosophical views that one eradicates the causes of suffering and attains happiness. That's all.
yang samdang goyachi ra pena chagdang gi wangi dungar khanda chiyung yemit ra pena nganzu mundum batia chagdang gi wangi ra chobon penjum tumbu me batia chagdang gi wangi 간지 아니 롱본 편주 문틈 바디야 차당기 왕기 디 용구요레스 베나 아니 베나 컨트롤 생인디 주 대차라야 된대지 저 대차 가지고 아니 슈그체와 디 저기 컨트롤 망사야지 용구요레스 아니 마리와 슈치온디게 대차기 용거레스 라 마리발 되는 대차긴 대차ල් 되는 공조긴 공주왕기더니 아니 자와 농주도서 마탕이 자와 마로의 자와 디 만샤지 디 용거레스 라
Let's talk a little bit more about this because it's important to have it clear. So from attachment and anger primarily that we bring harm to ourselves and others. So for example, from attachment and anger, we divide the world into what we like and dislike, and into those that we like and dislike. For example, there'll be those people that we like, and therefore those that we dislike, or groups, nations, or races that we like and dislike. This comes from attachment and anger itself comes from attachment. So there's a sequence. And the stronger the attachment, the stronger the anger that is going to follow. So there's a sequence that from attachment, from wanting something and then not getting it, or something happens contrary to it, anger follows. And the stronger this wanting, this attachment, the stronger the anger. And attachment itself comes from ignorance. So therefore there is a sequence. From ignorance arises attachment, and from attachment follows anger. And this is the sequence that we add to the problems and difficulties and sufferings of our own experience and that others have to experience. That's all.
The Maribi Yongi, Dachaki Kebare Slawandi, Tanganzo, and Geshe Lelhawu Jada Kalakabu race. Kasana Kotawan Tartu Gani, Tawat, and Tashu Gani, Geshe Gogdasra. Only any Jomden Tawa Tenjong singing T Tolaya, and it is Lobjonche, Sang Tamaina, Tenjong singing Tigi, and it Rawangi tribute Tonga said, Tending Quaji Chai Joris, Chuk Kandajilla Javainako, ten in Jongaris Laundi, Chigla ten in Jongaret, ten in Jongores Lavina, Koran Rawangi Tony, Yon took Mevadi, Troop took Mevadi, Sewishu Chai Ingos, right?
Perhaps the relationship between from attachment, anger follows is not too difficult to see. But that attachment arises from ignorance. This is more difficult to come to understand. And it's difficult, to be honest, to present it in a brief manner and just in a few statements. It really takes both an extensive explanation and extensive reflection on that explanation to come to understand the relationship of how from ignorance the other afflictions, primarily attachment, arise. But a way that this can be presented in brief is through the Buddha's teachings on dependent arising. So dependent arising, or can be understood as interdependence. Here we can understand that everything that exists, whether it's thoughts or words or other material things, arise independently. They arise independent on something other than themselves. So they are interdependent, not independent. Because independent and a dependence arising are contrary. Or, to use other words, something being independent and interdependent are contrary. Something cannot be both interdependent or dependent arising and independent. They cannot be both, but can only be one. And the Buddha taught that everything that exists is a dependence arising, is interdependent, dependent on something else. That's all.
Samnalaya, Ratanga Slaundi, and Suzulaya, Lu Nga Yixum Jungeres, the Ni Lu Slaundi, Nanzura Ni Lu Slaundi, Pig Rang Yobadoch, Koran Rang Tubdeva Matochi, and it good and came Mampu Gelatin, Trubiobating, Samnalaya, Sam Casota, Ranjin Hingilaya, Tindiji Shergio Maras. In the assembly, I was Tamana, and a ludi P. the Guyamambu Gelatini, so Pamani Latini, Lud Tugodas. And it chick Pamani Pig, and it chicks Nelly Yobat Samain, but Telean chick came Mambu Sony, Nanzulu Trubio, this civil shudra. Indeed, some Tamana, and in Ni Lu Sag, so can I Mateva. Tiyobadi, any some of the ten Shuchon Rosara.
The self, or the sense of self-identity that we have, This we have in relation to our body, our speech, and my mind, my individual thoughts. But let's take the way we think about our body. The way we spontaneously think about our body is if it were independent, or to use other words, if it had some freedom. This is how it appears to us. This is how we spontaneously think about it. But when we take time and actually think about it, we can easily recognize our body is not independent. It doesn't have freedom because it came about independent on causes. It's not independent of causes or free of causes, which is how we naturally, spontaneously think about it. But when we do consciously think about the situation of our body, we can readily recognize then that it came about independence on causes. Most clearly, our parents, but also throughout our life, many other causes are accumulated to sustain our body for it to develop and for it to grow. So here we need to recognize that the way we regularly think about our body is that it is independent, that it's freedom. But when we think about it intellectually, then we can finally recognize that no, that's not how it exists. It exists independent on many causes, such as our parents, nutrition, exercise, and so forth. And having an understanding that is in accordance with reality, this has many benefits. Lasso.
Dindi, that does a young sometimes. Kaukalangan lelavo dojavana, Kolelavo is some the Shashager. And di Chena, and it so similar pandy. Pendo chong yung go sa resra yang song tang wa na same thing ning nge ba nye ji yung go sa the d is similar shuji pendo same yuan dro ya la pendo shuji ro tin za danda ngan zu lu chu dang to ni lu gi cha to ni song tang wang di ani chi pa me ko da la so ba dan ge mang bu ji le den ni chong yo ba di ngui ni zro was di ngui ni zu song tang wa na 아니 니루스는 배 숙침부 수직비게 진대야기 니 인삼비 진대야디 진바디 야자야자 뭐 총도 그래서 딱 니루스는 진바 숙침부 줘봐나 아니 텔레덴비게 룰라 착바치 용야 안 텔레덴비게 직 데스 직 만디바 람산 직 콘트로사야다 아니 마기바 용야디 그러 니 텔레 직 뇌송 삼삼 로질레는 나라 직 뇌송 삼삼게 Knowledge yaw chimundu something loch lebana lamsa maki wachagres.
What I'm presenting here is a little difficult to understand when you're hearing about it for the first time. It's something one needs to hear about quite a lot, and not just hear, but one needs to think about it. The deeper, the more one hears on this topic, and the deeper one reflects on it, the greater the impact it will have on oneself. And the way that impact is experienced is that one comes to know oneself ever better, and thereby this correct way of thinking that's in accordance with reality starts to impact on our daily life. So by thinking that this body is actually dependent on many causes, most obviously my parents, that way of thinking is in accordance with reality. Whereas the natural spontaneous way of thinking about a body is that it is independent of causes, and that is not in accordance with reality. So because our way of relating to our body, for example, is not in accordance with reality, we then grasp at our body as existing in a way that it does not, as existing as being independent. And that is not in accordance with reality. So from this consciousness that grasps at the body as existing in a way that it does not, which is a consciousness of ignorance, from that attachment arises. And from that attachment, anger arises. And from that, unhappiness, suffering arises. When people criticize us, we feel, I have been criticized. There's the attachment arising from ignorance. And from that, We may feel weak and dispirited, or anger may come. So this is the situation we find ourselves in because we believe that our body exists in a way that it does not. And that is a consciousness of ignorance. Lasso.
Terdenza ani tanganzu ngao nyawundi ani nga sawundi ngadi sukhaya mateba sosuchi yebi chornanji Geshe yadama yunguyoresra tadipa chewundi pigige sosugi chornan nashingi ngaji pigilaya yoda me tagna cheni nigimewadi yang nguyores ra tindi nguyo mambu chigi tholaya samla tangdi teni nguyo mahimba thegi ani samlo joras nguyo mahimba sambi samlo di ani shukchong rach ra nguyo netsu shiwondi nguyo mahimba samlo chornan di shukchong rondi that ani semdi hele shagasares ra anzo sem chuk rayadi nguyo mahimbi rig mabu sem nalaya ani tsanga damasun jawandi ani sem chuk ra ani sem magiba chayachi that this Geshe yadama jomden dige that this shows songuyo sar samgudasra ngi samna
A mind that believes something to exist that does not, that's an ignorance. A mind that is in accordance with reality, that we can call a wisdom. So from an ignorance that grasps at the I as existing in a way that it doesn't, our problems come, our suffering comes, our difficulties in life come. So to the extent that we then, having understood this, investigate how the I exists. So for this, we'll hear many teachings and we'll be reflecting, how does the I exist? We will come slowly to recognize how it actually exists. And now our understanding is becoming ever more in accordance with reality. So our wisdom is growing. And as our wisdom grows, this wisdom that understands how our I, our sense of self, actually exists in reality, as this wisdom grows, the contrary mind, the opposite mind, that of the ignorance that misapprehends the reality of the self, that weakens. So like on those old-fashioned scales, as one side goes up, the other side naturally goes down. As our wisdom grows, our ignorance decreases. And how we will experience that is that our mind, with a growing wisdom, is ever more peaceful, ever more at ease, ever less disturbed by life's events. But because our mind, our way of thinking, is so much more in accordance with reality, we experience far greater happiness, and it's much more difficult for that happiness to be disturbed. So this is for certain. This really is true. As we develop our wisdom, as we develop a correct understanding of reality, our ignorance will fade away, and we will experience ever more happiness. That's okay.
tere ganji jomden dige chuk khanda jimba ya tenin jongare seti ra tenin jong yimbi gyunsen chi saml tang thoba na tenin jong mayin bar rawang gi thuba sambi lodi samlo di ani nongchu yimba nguye nitsul singmeba nguye nitsul ya momba ta momba yimba di ani tenjong tone singo dasra ta ten dishi onde nguye nitsul mombi wangi ani chagdan nyumuke ani chagdan nyumungi wang songi chawa khaimba di ani megiwa yimba dungar yimba ta dungar sana thamandi wa yimba ha kondi ta dungar pi mundibi lodi kol hengini yobata ani ngonigi dungar yondan di ngonchondi ta dindigi dungar di sosun degu meba nanshi me shingya shenla ya gugu meba ta ko dungar in dindigi tondi ani sulla dungar jungu yana telaya dunga de majoro china sambigi lodi kiyo sares ko dunga inza ko mugoya gi chöjinza su kanlaya gugmebi chöjinza ta di majoro china sambigi ani samlo dirwa mingunni gi pigi ta namchi yongin so samlo dilego res ta dilleba ina ta di ninji sedres ro ta dewa da denro china sambati chamba dirda sangi gi ta ani cham ninji dan chambi lo ni de ani nganzola ya ani gongi jing tinji lo ni de nganzu gyula ya kiya gi tabshi shoji tabshi shoji nani ani kali gyab do asra labja ke yores ta di nganzu ani nganzu mi gi luden tongen so labja di lab tu yo banza lab tu ya gi niba yoshendo 다 말라바이나 아니 수수 미세디 미세 밀류 약부디 다 촐라서로 지르와스라
The Tama Denge Disco Thomsong, Dibatung is Helpo Gosong, the Jampada Ninja De Dundak Dire, this Helpo Gosong, then the De Tamasa Pachelang is Helpo Gomasong?
다 딘디기 잠바다 닌지디 nganzu gyulaya kiyak 탑시디 좀 된디기 쇼지 나샤스 이 돌아야 라브자 쇼지 견도스 이제 디비 좀 된디기 라브자 만나샤비 라브자디 라야 랍퉁인기 수투글 쓰는 간주 미기 로 미기 랍투글 마도 톤로투스 랍투그 마르와 이제 간주 딜라야 니버 여신도 간주 디 말라바이나 간주 메세드 톨란다고 저래샤스
Buddha Shakyamuni presented or taught that everything that exists is a dependence arising. So all phenomena, everything that exists is a dependence arising. And he established this through presenting many, many reasons. And this is how we must come to understand it too, by relying on reasoning, thinking for ourselves, analyzing, investigating, is it really like this or not? This is how we'll come to understand how things exist. Everything exists in reality. So this is a process by which we focus on ourselves first and foremost. And by this, we come to get to know ourselves really for the very first time. We come to recognize how our way of thinking about everything is in some way mistaken, because we believe phenomena to exist in a way that they just do not. And therefore, because of this ignorance, attachment arises and anger arises. And from this, all our problems, our difficulties, our suffering arises. Then, to the extent that we come to recognize this with perfect clarity in relation to ourselves, we apply this understanding to others. We will recognize really on a deep level that we are all the same. We will see in the behavior of others how they are acting because of their ignorance. Their anger arises or their attachment arises because of their ignorance, their misapprehension of how things actually exist, their misapprehension of reality. So in this way, we'll come to understand why others are suffering too. And here we are recognizing that due to the ignorance that binds us ordinary beings, I suffer and they suffer too. Here, independence on us already having given rise to the wish for ourselves to eradicate this ignorance that causes us to suffer, we will now naturally, compassion will arise for others, wanting them to be freed of this ignorance. And love will arise for them, wanting them to abide in stable happiness, a happiness that is freed of ignorance, just like we want for ourselves. So this is the actual meaning of compassion and love in Buddhism. And Buddha Shakyamuni taught this unique and remarkable method to generate love and compassion. So there really is quite a unique understanding of love and compassion in Buddhism from society's understanding. And the method to develop such a deep and transformative love and compassion is something that can only come about in dependence on hearing the teachings of the Buddha and having the intellectual capacity to understand the words, and not merely understand them, but integrate them through repeated hearing of teachings, reading of texts, and meditating. And it's only humans who can do this, who have the capacity to hear these teachings and understand them and integrate them, and thereby develop happiness for themselves and love and compassion towards others. In this way, we recognize the truly unique capacity that all human beings have and that we have. This leads to a deep determination to utilize this life well, to not let it go to waste. That's okay.
Terda dinza tenjonggi tenjongare said he tolya katsu sigi cheba chetuwana ani nguyu nitsu ra nguyu pigita nitsu yutsul jorasra nguyu nitsu said hakoya jida ani nguyu nitsulya mombege mariba ti wang chongwe ta chagdan yumo ti wang chongwege ani ta dungar natsu tamanti wa yongsul di ani ta sebu shoji tong yungu yores ten tong di ta ti wang ta chagdan yumongi wangi dungar nar dengen ki simjen kandaji imbayna ya ani ta di dunga datana chimano nyambata 아니 대탐지 동할 세위기 아니 된도 따지 레가지 최고도 삼비기 샘슈지 야자 야다면 연구여서래서 민남주 친솔이야 다 디탐지 동할 트러비기 탑지다 최고도 삼비기 로이톱시 연구여래서 딘지 토는다 잔주고 샘 송댕이디 딘지지 토는 연구여래서 다 간지 먼저 좀 된디기 따두 손자에 텐종 그리고 생기디 로 텐닌 종원자 라만드 트비오 마리 세기 아니 균세 리버티 톨야치 랍토바나 되는 원에 산지기 쳐려야 샘띵니 로 산지기 쳐디 아니 가서다 만다와지긴 바다 원에 팬도 니지 영행기 랍샤지 임바디 소수 샘띵 소리야지 용사레스라 딘온데다 디톨라 상로 가수스 담아이나야 냠나 자원이니 연구여 말이스더라 디톨라 가수스 상로단 가수스 발 띵삽단에나 가서다 지 칼라다마스노 조체를 줘야지 디 연구여레스라
This presentation on dependence arising, to the extent that we investigate whether this presentation from the Buddha is correct or not, to the extent we investigate that, we will come to realize or recognize how everything that exists, how it exists in reality. We do so by first really coming to recognize ourselves, to understand ourselves, to get to know ourselves well, to recognize how the role that ignorance plays in our life, that every mind is accompanied with ignorance, and that this ignorance is contrary to reality. So everything we think about, the way we apprehend, the way we engage with what we are thinking about, is not in accordance with reality. There is some degree of fault, and therefore the afflictions arise. Attachment arises, wanting things to be the way I want them to be. And anger arises when they're not. And we see this process within, and we recognize how it's from this. All our pain, all our misery arise. Then we come to really know why we are bound in the suffering realms of samsara. To the extent we recognize this with ourselves, we can recognize it with others. Recognize that they are in the same suffering position as we are, completely deluded by their ignorance, deceived by their own ignorance. And from this, we understand why beings are tormented, bound in these suffering realms of samsara. Seeing this, the result is a deep and sincere and dominating determination to cultivate the Dharma within, so that one's own mind can become ever more liberated, and a deep love and compassion for others, and a determination to help others as we develop, to help them to gain their own freedom. This is the method that Buddha taught for the generation of bodhicitta. This powerful determination to live this life committed to cultivating virtue within in order to help others in the most meaningful of ways. So therefore, that to the extent that we come to understand, or to come to understand how everything that exists is interdependent, everything that exists arises dependently. To understand this, we have to use reasons. We have to analyze, think for ourselves, investigate a wide variety of phenomena and a wide variety of circumstances, coming to see that each and every one is part of this chain that either leads to suffering, or by breaking it through understanding reality, freedom can be attained. So by using reasons, we come to understand the Buddha's teachings deeply in a transformative manner. And from this, so much benefit comes to ourselves. And through this benefit to ourselves and the growing good qualities within us, benefit comes to all those that we encounter. Because as we come to understand reality through dependent arising, our ignorance that misapprehends, misunderstands reality weakens. As this weakens, or the reason for its weakening is the arisal of our wisdom. As our wisdom arises, our ignorance weakens. And as our ignorance weakens, so too do the resulting afflictions of attachment and anger. And therefore, our attachment, anger, and so forth arise less frequently, and when they do, are less powerful, and therefore don't abide so long. Moreover, as our wisdom is growing, not only is this weakening our afflictions, but it's strengthening our love and compassion. This is the great benefit that comes from reflecting deeply on dependence arising. That's all.
Digi labja digi nganzu mit sang lola ya ra suge pige labja ti nyamlen chewa na ya pendo yungu yores kansana tambo labja de tarsa de jagar wasra jagar miri di des chik shamdo des nagbo yodejo ane subo da chik pebadang jamidang winam de zul sibayna subu chenbu yodejo shamdo naguk chenbu yodejo 딘디질에 다르비기 추어디 랍자디 비기 페바 아니 나우춘종 수부춘종 동바테스 세보스를 해야지 두슬 쉬우지 pen 열어서라 다 단다 아니 수부천보 나우천보 동까보 여댕의 속이 뭐야 자차 자동 뱅그레스 등이 사이 잡트서라 대생한주 미스 미리기 개와메바 미스그베 좀 된데 라브자들 라바이나 샘레 팽그리스 이 그래서 뭐였는지 셰샤죠 뭐였는지 때 술라 있나야 펜도 여름마도 너로서지 매바다디 너서도 니무도 som도 내고다 뭐였는지 깨져디게 삼로디게 아니 신줄로 로 신줄로 니무도 좀 세져라 대를 내고마도 샘바 수직을 내고 말했으라
To tie in with what we started at the beginning with, whoever puts these teachings into practice will only benefit. Only benefit will follow. And how much benefit? Entirely dependent on how much one hears and reflects and meditates on that. The more knowledge and the more effort to integrate that knowledge through reflection and meditation, the greater the benefit will come. But everyone, without exception, who hears and reflects on these teachings, integrating them, will benefit. So if you think about it, these teachings were originally given by Buddha Shakyamuni himself in ancient India. So those as the people in India are quite dark-skinned in general. And then when but they received great benefit. And also not only are they quite dark-skinned, they tend to be fairly tall. Then the teachings spread far and wide to Tibet, to China, to Vietnam. So in these countries, the people maybe are a little shorter, many are a lot paler, and certainly have small noses. But despite these very different bodies, great benefit was attained nevertheless. And now that the teachings of the Buddha are spread throughout our world, then even Westerners, with our larger bodies, our bigger noses, we too will be benefited tremendously from these teachings. But there is one class that is harmed by these teachings, but they're not beings. So no sentient being will be harmed, but there's something that is harmed, and that is our ignorance, our attachment, our anger. These, in fact, are decimated by the wisdom of the Buddha's teachings. But everyone who hears and reflects on these teachings, puts them into practice in their own mind, will benefit. That's okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much.
Final Lamrim dedication. For my two types of merits vasa space that I have amassed from working with effort at this practice for a grand length of time, may I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose minds' wisdom eye is blinded by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all life's Manjushri. May I find the best of complete graded paths of the teachings, and may I please all Buddhas by my practice. Using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings, with the points of the path as I have discerned them. May I uphold the Buddha's teachings for a very long time. With my heart going out with great compassion, in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread or once spread have declined, may I reveal this treasure of happiness and aid. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted boundless peace, and the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time, by even this graded path to enlightenment completed, due to the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddhas and their sons. May all human and non-human beings who eliminate adversity and create conducive conditions for practicing the excellent paths never be parted in any of their lives from the purest path praised by the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtues practices, may he always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may ocean of prosperity spread everywhere. Thank you very much.